Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle bookshop here in Boston, a used bookstore down in the heart of downtown Boston that I love and been going to for well over a year. I went there this morning to meet Regina St. Clair of Regina's Haunted Library, a BookTube channel. First time meeting in person, even though we worked together on a BookTube anthology that published a short story of mine. Uh, that was wonderful. But that was all. That was all it was to it. We met at the Brattle as a purely social call. I met with Regina and her husband, and I met with the good folks at the shop to say hi. That was all. Just I met with those people, shook hands, smiled, took pictures, and then left because it was just a social call. There was no reason for me to. I shopped for books while I was there, and I got a huge pile of them that I want to show you. uh, it's a gigantic pile. Let's get started on it. I believe it has everything: dead Romans, dead Kennedys, and dogs. The usual thing with me. The first thing that I want to show you is neither a paperback nor a hardcover. It is ephemera. It's a comic book. I really shouldn't be getting ephemera at the Brattle. I really shouldn't be doing that. I've way too much ephemera here to begin with, and also thousands of comic books. But I saw this for $1, and I remember it. I remember parceling out my dimes for it in 1976. So I got it again. This is Tarzan Family Giant issue. This is 50 cents from 1976. This was a time when DC Comics was... First of all, they had the franchise to Edgar Rice Burroughs, as you can tell from this cover. Not just Tarzan, but Korak and Carson of Venus and John Carter of Mars. But also, this was a time when DC Comics was experimenting with these giant comics. They had a banner across the top there. They were more expensive, and they tended to be a something or other family. So Superman family, Batman family, where there would be a bigger issue, and they would be in the normal numbering sequence of the title. Which in this case is Korak, the son of Tarzan, who for a long time, or not a long time, but for a while in DC Comics when they were managing this franchise, had a comic of his own that was rather daring, a rather daring departure. Korak is the killer. He is the son of Tarzan, grows up, goes into the wild, largely becomes a younger teen hottie version of Tarzan, but not in DC Comics. In DC Comics, for a while they did that, and then they decided to make him a kind of Fantasyland wanderer whose fates are whimsically overseen by a trio of gods rolling around on a cloud that he never meets. And this Korak, he meets sorceresses, for instance, but also, let me give you an indication here of what I'm talking about. He also meets gigantic sea monsters and land creatures the same way, giant mythical land creatures. It's all very it's not sword and sorcery, but it's not Edgar Rice Burroughs at all, or not close to it for a lot of these issues, and I liked it. I kind of liked it. I kind of like that approach. The Korak in these issues in the 1970s is a flower child. He's cut, he's ripped, but he's skinny. He's got long floppy hair, and he's always falling in love, and he's not all that happy with violence. It's the 70s. He's a lover, not a fighter, but he fights in every issue. And this issue is just incredible. For 50 cents is what you got. I paid $1 for this today, and I have the 50-cent copy of this somewhere here. I have this. I would never get rid of these things. This has an original Joe Kubert cover. So he is drawing the cover of this great picture where Korak encounters not Circe, but Sirena, a sorceress who can turn people into animals. And also you've got a little image there, barely anything, of John Carter of Mars. And here you've got a spaceship for Carson of Venus. And there's a jungle album where Kubert just draws a few of Bomangani. And then Tarzan, of course. You've got Tarzan on the cover of Tarzan Family. You have to have him. There he is, I guess, slipping on a banana peel while a lion looks on. This is an original Joe Kubert cover, but there is no Joe Kubert artwork in here. The main story is Korak. It's really well done. It is the art is by Rudy Flores, Rudyflorese. Is that Rudy Nebres? I don't know if that is or not. It certainly looks like it. But if it's Rudy Nebres, then my question would be who inked him, because his pencils don't look like that. Rudy Nebres did a few. He did a little bit of. He hovered around the edges of the artwork of Korak, but this is. I remember this story, and it's terrific stuff. It's just opulent, terrific stuff. Very bright, very. What weird world is this we find ourselves in? So you get that as your initial story. Then you get a John Carter story. A woman trapped in an emerald, in a giant emerald. And then all this artwork here. This is a brand new. Pre-order your copy of Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man, the battle of the century. Ross Andrew artwork. And these are the whole page of those old larger Treasury editions that I mentioned the other day. DC recently reprinted one of these. It isn't any of these. It's Batman's Strangest Cases. But there's the old Whiz. There's Batman with his supervillains. There's the Flash. This Superman volume, what I wouldn't give for DC to reprint that. I would love it. Super Friends. But when you're done with John Carter of Mars, which is new for this issue, and the Korak Adventure, which is new for this issue, you get some reprints. Like, for instance, Russ Manning, the great Russ Manning. A long adventure in Russ Manning, who I will take him anywhere I can find him. He is just incredible as a Tarzan artist. So you get Russ Manning, and then when his adventure is over, let's see, you get Carson of Venus with Mike Kaluta artwork. And I would say that none of us at the time in the 1970s knew the bounty that we were getting here, but I did. Plenty of people did. And 50 cents was money then. It wasn't chump change, but it was worth it. These giant issues were worth it. And then you get Tarzan's Jungle album. There's Johnny Weissmuller. But what the Jungle album is turns out to be just reprints from the newspaper strip. Complete with, if I remember correctly, this storyline has an immortal panel where Tarzan has a gun. He's just holding a revolver there. He's got a knife, but he's got a gun as well. And that newspaper artwork is by the great Hal Foster, who went on to Prince Valiant. So you get all that in one issue here. Plus, you can always buy your 1976 DC calendar. So I got ephemera. I couldn't resist. So I got ephemera, but I also got a bunch of books. So let's see what we can do here. I got a couple of mass market paperbacks. Both of them, the first in a series. I got Thus Was Adonis Murdered by Sarah Caldwell, the late Sarah Caldwell, with an Edward Gorey cover there. I'm pretty sure that's where this comes from. The Brattle recently got a ton of Goriana, a ton of it. And I'm pretty sure that this was part of that. This is a Hilary Tamar legal murder mystery. It's a team of barristers who basically solve crimes. They solve crimes as a cocktail entertainment. They don't ever take it really seriously. And they run everything by Hilary Tamar. And you might think from this cover that is Hilary Tamar, but no, no, it could be any one of those people. Hilary is a man's name as well as a woman's name, and Sarah Caldwell very, very ingeniously in these murder mysteries never specifies whether Hilary Tamar is a man or a woman. Which, when you think about it, especially those who've written novel-length fiction of your own, think about how hard that is to do. That's pretty hard to do and not slip up. And this is the first of the Hilary Tamar books. Unfortunately, we don't have an endless supply of them. There are only, I think, 3 or 4 of them before the author died. I'm not going to sermonize. The author had a habit. She took it on herself. She took it on against the advice of her friends and family and doctor, and she died of that habit. And I bet you can guess what that habit is, so I'm not even going to bother. Then the other one is the first in the Kennedy series. This is George V. Higgins. This is Kennedy for the Defense. I have this mass market. I have a copy of this mass market somewhere, but I don't know what kind of shape it's in. These old pulpy type paperbacks, you can see they deteriorate. So good to have a double of this for when I want to revisit it, and I will want to revisit it because George V. Higgins is great. He's known today. I mean, I think most of his stuff is out of print, probably all of it, except for his signature book, The Friends of Eddie Coyle. And that's a shame. If that's true, that's a shame because all of his books are great. And Kennedy for the Defense is great too. It's a little bit slapdash when it comes to the actual structure of a novel, to the actual structure of a narrative, but it is so incredibly readable. Oh my God, it is so zippy, especially dialogue, that I didn't care. This mass market paperback came out in 1980. And, oh no, the book came out in 1980. This paperback came out in 1992. I was going to say 1980 would be a little bit odd because I remember when this came in. I remember when I opened a box and found this at my bookstore and was so happy for a new paperback printing of Kennedy for the Defense. Kennedy is the main character here, and he constantly needs to remind people that he's not those Kennedys. But this is a wonderful, these are actually both wonderful books, both first in their respective series, and both a real temptation to go on the reading pile for tonight. I always say that about a Brattle book haul, that I don't just get these things and chuck them somewhere. I put a toehold in them right away, and usually that is by reading something that night rather than waiting. And I don't know, these two are strong candidates, but there's a lot of strong candidates here. I found this little thing, very happy to have this. I have one other volume like this. The author here is Thomas Wentworth Higginson, and this is his book, Carlyle's Laugh and Other Surprises. This is Thomas Wentworth Higginson of Boston fame, of John Singer Sargent portrait fame. And this is a collection of literary bits and pieces. Same as the two others that I have from him. So what do we got here? A Shelley manuscript, a Keats manuscript, an essay on James Fenimore Cooper, an essay on Charles Brockden Brown, an essay on Thoreau, one on Emerson. There's an essay here on Charles Eliot Norton. That's the only thing in this book that I know. There's one on Edward Everett Hale. There's one on John Bartlett. There's, in other words, James Elliott Cabot, Julia Ward Howe. So this is basically profiles of Steve people. This is the ultimate Steve book. So most of the New England luminaries in here I know backwards and forwards. I know everything there is to know about them, except what Higginson wrote about them. So, so I'm very happy to find that. And that also is a strong candidate. Maybe not the whole thing, but it's a strong candidate to read some of those tonight. Then I found this is just a very thorough, conscientious textbook, I imagine. This was once upon a time a textbook from the 1950s. Well, the first edition was 1935. It was reprinted and given a second edition in 1954, and then continually reprinted after that, probably because it was used in schools. This is M. Carey's A History of Rome down to Constantine. And it's just an old-fashioned thing. You've got fold-out maps of, there's one of Italy. I'm sure there's one of the city itself. What are you? Oh, no, this is just the Roman Forum there. Built, pulling together from archaeological scraps. And then all you've got is just a straight rundown. A few illustrations and the classic old one-line synopsis of where you are in the story on the side, on the margin of all of these things. I'm kind of surprised that there's no map of the Roman Empire. There simply must be. Here we go. So you do have a map of the Roman Empire here. Something fell out. What are you? Oh. An individual book. This is not breaking apart. This is an individual book. This is a little index of foreign words and phrases. It's just in here. I love these sorts of things. I used to have a whole bookcase of them until I realized, you're never going back to these. You're not looking at them. So now I don't have. I think I have two. Histories of Rome, from Romulus and Remus to Constantine and his conversion. So I don't have many of these, and I don't think I've ever read this one, no matter how many editions it's had. So happy to have it. Happy to have a History of Rome. Then there's this little thing. I'm not quite sure why I grabbed this. Are you going to give us an author photo so I know how young you were when this came out? No. Okay, this is Paul Auster, who I've always liked better as a critic than as a novelist. And this is his book, The Art of Hunger: Essays, Prefaces, and Interviews. And this is an earlier, I have a whole wall of books about books and books about authors and whatnot. And Paul Auster is on there. I have a couple of volumes for him. But I always get these earlier volumes because, when did you come out? 1992. Oh my God. I always get these earlier ones because as time goes on and a Paul Auster figure gets grayer and more eminent, their publisher might go to them, or they might go to their agent, might go to their publisher and say, all right, well, it's been a while. It's been 10 years, maybe 20 years. Let's bring out another collection of Paul Auster's nonfiction. Very few writers can actually bear that, and he can. So let's do that. And sometimes nominally, sometimes not nominally, sometimes genuinely, the author will be involved in the selection process. Gore Vidal always was. And that tends to telescope things. So an author in 1992, looking at his body of critical work, will say, I want basically all of it in there. I worked hard on it for my $50. But in 2002 or 2012, that same author who's got, a couple of Bookers under his belt will say, no, some of this stuff strikes me now as juvenilia. So we're going to leave some of that out, and we'll include some of the rest of this, and we'll include some newer stuff. And I understand that, but I don't want that. If I like an author writing about nonfiction, I want it all. So I get these earlier volumes just because I'm never sure that they are subsumed into the later volumes. So what are the sorts of things that he's writing about here? Kafka, Isaac Babel, more Kafka. Resurrection is on page 120. That cannot be the Tolstoy novel. What a thing that would be if it were. Prefaces to 20th century French poetry. And a couple of interviews. Yeah, so the essays at the beginning here, The Art of Hunger, Itinerary, New York Babel, The Decisive Moment, Dada, Bones. Some of these things will certainly not be in the later Paul Auster. So now I have this. I have a whole section for it, so I will pour over this, read the stuff that really interests me, and then move on. Okay, this next one was an indulgence. It was $3. So I indulged myself. This is Everyman Library edition of The Life of Samuel Johnson by James Boswell, with the cloth bookmark there. Just the naked Everyman's Library that has... This is the unabridged Life of Johnson with, I imagine, letters? Is there anything other than that? Well, as an introduction, there might be stuff in the back, but I have many, many editions of the Life of Johnson, of Boswell's Life of Johnson, and I'm pretty sure, not 100%, I'll have to double check, but I think that squat little brick of an Oxford World Classics, the old paperback of Oxford World Classics, Life of Johnson, is this edition. I think that it is. Not just the same book, but the same edition, the same notes, the same everything. I could be wrong about that, but one way or another, I've got the Oxford, I've got the great Penguin Classic, and I've got a bunch of hardcovers. I did not need another Life of Johnson, but I love these old library editions. So I grabbed it. I mean, I don't believe that you're in a position to morally judge me. I think if you were there in the sale lot and you had thousands of books all around you, all for $3 a piece, and you had a Checky Poo burning a hole in your pocket, I bet you'd have done the same. We shall see. Because someday you're all going to be at the Brattle with me. Okay, then this next one, this was from 2014. And I saw it when it came out. We probably saw it on this channel. Oh, no, we didn't, did we? No, I didn't have this channel in 2014. I got the advanced copy here in the U.S., and I got the finished copy. I got rid of both of them, and I agonized over it. I have a one bookcase on the wall over there where all the new books go, where all the publishers' releases go, and I move them up month by month and week by week, and so it gives me a long time to look at a lot of them. And I was agonizing over this thing for months and months and months. I don't think I ever wrote about it, and I did not keep those volumes. I didn't keep the advanced copy, I didn't keep the finished copy, and every once in a while, when that is true, you really regret it. And I'm not saying that it's bandwagon jumping, although there is an element of that. because some of these books don't let go. They keep getting talked about. You realize after a year or maybe 2 years that they aren't part of that group of books I always talk about on this channel that are here today and literally gone tomorrow, where no one talks about them anymore. Some of them aren't like that. Some works of nonfiction or history aren't like that. They suddenly start cropping up in other people's bibliographies. No one quite forgets them. There have been a handful. There was a book just recently, just a few years ago, on the origins of the concept of genocide and the concept of crimes against humanity. That is great. That book is great. And people have just acknowledged it over time. They have just acknowledged it. Same thing with, for instance, what's an older example? Africa by John Reeder would be another example where it came, people wrote about it, talked about it, then it went, but people couldn't get it out of their minds. This book is the same thing, and I found not only a galley copy and a review copy, but a UK galley copy. How on earth this thing made its way to the Brattle sale lot in Boston, I have no idea. The closest I can probably think of is that a book reviewer of some kind or other brought this over on the plane, maybe while they were here, maybe for a medical procedure or to see their kid off to school. Maybe while they were here in 2014, they wrote their review and thought, I've bought a bunch of other stuff while I'm here. I don't need to lug this back to London, so I'll just leave it here. If so, it took a long time to get out of the sale lot. But this is Bettina Strangnath, and this is her book Eichmann Before Jerusalem. Although a chunk of this book is also Eichmann after. This is Eichmann's story, and the story of his rise in the ranks, and also the story of his time in the wilderness, of his time hiding from the world and from retribution. And it's, of course, Eichmann is famous for, he's famous for standing trial for his crimes, but also he's famous for the spin that Hannah Arendt put on his time in the docket in Eichmann in Jerusalem, where she talks about the banality of evil, where she talks about the fact that this was a mousy little clerk who was just doing his job in one of the greatest crimes of all time, one of the greatest crimes in human history. And this book, it squarely takes aim at that characterization by creating in Eichmann the incredibly evil supervillain that he almost certainly was. This is more convincing than Hannah Arendt's version of him. And it draws, if I remember correctly, it draws on a huge amount of documentary evidence that no one had access to when Hannah Arendt wrote her book. I'm not sure that it would have made a difference to her. I think she had a point to make with Eichmann in Jerusalem, and I think she'd have made it anyway, no matter what. But this is eye-opening stuff. And now I have a copy. I kick myself that I did not write about this. And that moment is gone. Unfortunately. With classics, classics are constantly being repackaged, so you get another chance to write about a classic, an actual canonical classic. You get another chance to do that. But with these things, you're either in on the conversation or you're not, around the time when it's happening. And I love being in on the conversation. I am a very small voice in that conversation, but still there. And I missed it with this. I just plain missed it. This is a major thing, a major, challenging, beautifully written thing. And I just skipped it. Unconscionably, I just skipped it. So I was very happy to find this Bodley Head galley copy that I will, this will be my copy now. And since I found it, I will certainly reread it. Let's see here. Okay, this next one is a nice plush fake leather, very squishy cover. Very, very nice. But it is still an example of something that I've shown you many times before. These big remainder reprint volumes, whether it's Avenel or Fall River is the one doing it now, or whoever it is. This is Octopus Books, where a publisher will just pull together a bunch of writings from an author, put them in a nice edition, and that'll be that. And you see them all the time, and I have increasingly come to like them. I used to avoid them at all costs. I used to say, well, no, if I want one book by John le Carré, I'll buy that, but I don't want it lodged in 1,000 pages of other books. I'm never going to be in the mood for that much of any one author. And I never am. I was right about that. It's just, I'm not stuck in the book. I can dive into it, read just one part of it, and then dive out again. And I found a volume today on Robert Louis Stevenson. Very nice, with this squishy leather, with the marbled end papers here. And also, I thought I spotted illustrations. Did I spot illustrations? Oh boy, this is loaded with stuff. There's tons of stuff in here. Cody's Books in Berkeley, California. And then all sorts of paperwork that ought to be in here. No, I guess I didn't spot illustrations. But I have a whole bunch of these anthology volumes, and I don't have this one. I don't have Robert Louis Stevenson, so that was great to find that. Put this stuff aside, all this stuff. Then I found this next one is by Michael Foot, the politician, Michael Foot. He wrote a book years ago that I loved. I know I shouldn't have, because he's a politician, which means when I'm not kissing babies, I'm stealing their lollipops. But nevertheless, I love it. And I have a copy that is in such crappy condition. And I thought, I've seen that copy for years, and I have looked at it on my shelf, pulled it down when I need to bone up on the subject. And for years I've said, well, as crappy a condition as this you'd better hold on to it, because you're never going to see another copy of that book. It's just never going to happen. But the Brattle will provide, and the Brattle did provide. This is The Politics of Paradise by Michael Foot, and the subtitle is A Vindication of Byron, and it gets around to being a vindication of Byron, but it's about so much more than that. This is about the nature of literary fame and also the nature of literary criticism. I remember when I first read this. When did this come out? Oh, look at this. Oh my God, this is a review copy. This was sent to a newspaper. So there's the glossy photo that you would send to your mock-up guy, because he needs something like this in order to put a picture with the review. There's no online. There's no internet. So he needs something like this. He can't take it from anywhere. You better include it. And then a little slip. We take pleasure in sending you this review copy of The Politics of Paradise. Direct quotation in reviews is limited to 500 words unless special permission is given. Please send us 2 copies of your review. Please do not release reviews before publication date. And just as simple as that. No, not 5 pages. Just as simple as that. Just the instructions on what you need to do. This came out in January 18th, 1989. Isn't that incredible? Direct quotation in reviews is limited to 500 words unless special permission is given. Please send us 2 copies of your review. Please do not release reviews before publication date. As simple as that. All right, simple. All right, so this went to a newspaper somewhere. This went to somebody. But a huge chunk. I remember when I first read this. It wasn't 1989, but it was in the 90s. The first time I read it, I was overjoyed by the way that it begins, the gigantic throat clearing at the beginning. It's not about Byron at all. I don't even remember when Byron's name is first mentioned in this book. It's all Hazlitt. Wonderfully. It's all Hazlitt. It's all about Hazlitt for a huge chunk of the book. And that is because, as Foote puts it, I think he says it right up front, William Hazlitt was my guide. That's the first sentence of this book. He wants to use Hazlitt's way of looking at things to look at Lord Byron. I have a whole bunch of Byron books. I absolutely love reading about this figure and his time. But I also have a lot of Byron books that come and go. He was once upon a time a cottage industry in the terms of literary production. People wrote books about him all the time, including plenty of people who had no business to do so. I always remember the line from The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, where Mrs. Muir has a manuscript. The captain the ghost of the captain has dictated his memoir, Blood and Swash, to her. And it's not the type of book that a prim and proper young lady would ever dream of writing. But she brings her manuscript to a publisher because she has a manuscript, you see, you must publish it. And there's a very cynical children's book author who's there, and he begins to good-naturedly taunt her about what the manuscript is. And he says to her, is it a book of dreams? Or perhaps another life of Lord Byron? And that gives you an idea of how chock-a-block these things are. There are a lot of Byron books out there. Maybe not anymore, but there once were a lot of Byron books out there. And yet, I would put this on a list of keepers, on a shelf of keepers. If I were doing a Byron starter kit, this would be on there. Then we have, let's see here, just a couple more, and then we'll be done. I found this big revised edition of the Letters of E.B. White. I've had the Letters of E.B. White, of New Yorker fame, I've had the Letters of E.B. White, the original version, on and off a million times in my life as a reader. But the revised edition is significantly bigger and has a lot of extra stuff in it too, a lot of critical stuff in it. So, and I never see it, just never see the revised edition. The Letters of E.B. White are all over the place. Used bookstores will tend to have it, but not this edition. And I saw it and thought, I really love this reading experience. The Letters of E.B. White. I mean, he's famous. I mean, he might not be a household name, but he did what one critic famously said was the only purpose of any writer, which is to write a bestseller. He wrote Charlotte's Web. Enough said. And his letters are full of literary talk. That's the one thing when I've had the non-revised edition of this, the one thing I've always loved about it is how bookish so many of these letters are. Bookish and writerly, contracts, deadlines, editors. It's all just wonderful to read. So I'm very happy to find it. And then finally, this last thing, if I can pull it out of the pile here. This was kind of weird. This was out in the sale lot. I did most of my shopping today out in the sale lot, as I always do. And I found out in the sale lot a deluxe gold gilt plush leather type thing, like a folio society. I never get those. You sometimes see them out in the sale lot. I never get them because they talk about pearls before swine. It's ridiculous for me to get a fancy book. I'm hard on my books, and I also don't care about whether or not they're fancy. But I saw this out there, and I thought, what on earth? It's this. It's the Nuremberg trial by Anne and John Tusa in just a really fancy edition with the cloth bookmark and everything. It says here that this book, this special edition of the book, has been privately printed for the members of the Notable Trials Library. And that's what this is. It is the book. It has the black and white insert of illustrations. The what is it called again? Notable Trials Library. The non-Notable Trials Library version of this, the normal hardcover, is in the Brattle. It's in the World War II section. And I knew that. I have been slightly tempted by it because recently fate, just random chances, put Nuremberg books in my way. And making me wonder if I'm being nudged a little to do a deep dive into Nuremberg. I wouldn't mind that at all. It's an utterly fascinating subject. But that normal hardcover is inside the shop. And I saw this outside for $3. No idea why. It's nice and durable, though. I'll definitely take it. The one inside is $10 or $15. And this is more or less the standard account of the Nuremberg trial. It's stately, it's careful, it's cautious, it's incredibly well documented. And it doesn't, if I remember correctly, I read it. Oh God, is the Notable Trials Library going to give me publication dates? Well, the special edition copyright is 1990. When did the book come out? Earlier than that, 1983. I read it in the 80s. And if I remember correctly, it doesn't have a lot of rhetorical pizzazz. It's not actually boring, but it would be tough to make this subject boring. And the authors don't go out on any kind of ideological limb, which is just as well. I have a pretty extreme ideological view of this whole subject myself. One of the very, very rare subjects on which I am in complete agreement with Joseph Stalin, or maybe even that I consider him to be a little wishy-washy. The Nuremberg trials should not have happened. The Nuremberg trials were an open invitation to a repetition of the crimes that brought all of the defendants there in the first place. I know that the nations of the world were all shocked. They were bleeding from the wounds of the war, and they wanted to assert both to the world and also, charmingly, to themselves, that the rule of law does still apply. That this was a barbaric interruption of the rule of law, and that we will not have it. We will return to the rule of law now and be ostentatiously fair in our post-war treatment of Nazi criminals. We'll be incredibly fair with them. It will not even be a guarantee that they will be convicted. And in my opinion, that is fundamentally wrong. That is how just and wise societies commit suicide. That is how they do it. By being so impressed with their own propriety that they don't do what needs to be done on a moral level when it needs to be done. If you have a presidential election running and one of the candidates is saying that if he doesn't get elected, if he doesn't win, he's going to riot and tell his followers to burn down the country, that if he does win, he's going to put his enemies to the sword. If you have a presidential election in which one of the candidates is saying that, you kill that candidate. I don't care if murder is illegal in your country. You send a CIA operative to put a bullet in his head. Otherwise, you are slowly agreeing to commit suicide. Civilization suicide. Same thing with the Nuremberg trials. Once the war was over, everyone who wore the Nazi uniform should have got a bullet in the head. Or worse. Certainly the leaders, certainly anyone who had any kind of authority, right down to the sergeants, should have been stripped naked, beaten in front of the press corps, and then hanged inexpertly, so that they dance and jiggle and discolor for an hour. Every one of them, from sergeant on up, every one of them. No trial, no witnesses, no interpreters, no headsets, no august panel of judges, no nothing like that. No, nothing like that. Your mantelpiece in your mother's house shows a picture of you proudly in your Nazi uniform. So you are going to die. We're going to make a spectacle of you, but it's not going to be a spectacle of how much we appreciate justice and the rule of law. We're going to make you strip in front of the World Press Corps. We're going to have someone beat you with rods in front of the World Press Corps, and then you're going to be hanged inexpertly in front of the World Press Corps, with you dangling there, slowly turning purple. That's going to be how you die. All of you. All of you. From the sergeants all the way up. No hesitation. No long period where you set a hall aside. No hiring of interpreters. No, nothing like that. If you don't do that, if you make a show instead about how much you value the rule of law, that you will extend it even to monsters, even to fascists who want to enslave you, who wanted to kill you and succeeded in killing huge numbers of you, if you do that, you are saying to every future would-be perpetrator, there's a chance. It's a roll of the dice. You're not sealing anything here. You can put on that uniform and you can herd people onto boxcars or set fire to libraries or ride rabbis around in the public square and pull at their beards like they were reins on a horse. You can do all of that because even if you lose, there's a chance that you'll spend a year with cold meals at Spandau Prison and then get out, or even get acquitted. The minute you set up that possibility, you encourage that result. It shouldn't exist. And also, obviously, I have an ideological stance when it comes to what you do with MAGA, to what you do with fascism, to what you do with Nazis. I have an ideological stance that these authors don't share. Of course, they don't. They're decent people. I never said I was decent on this subject. And this is a scrupulous, judicious book. So I'm not going to get any fire and brimstone like I just subjected you to. And I wonder if this means that I am going to do a deep dive on Nuremberg. There are 4 or 5. I would say probably not more than that. You have to consult with David Murphy, but I would say there aren't more than 4 or 5 truly monumentally great works on Nuremberg. There are a whole bunch of books, but the ones that you absolutely have to read, I don't think there's more than 5. And I believe I've read them all, but maybe it's time. I've got them all recently at the Brattle. I hardly go to the Brattle without getting a Nuremberg book now, so maybe it's time to reread them all in sequence. But anyway, that is this Brattle book haul, which was meant to be a social occasion, but of course I don't go to the Brattle without buying books. So we have the Nuremberg trial. We have Eichmann before Jerusalem. We have, let's see here, The Politics of Paradise, a real find at the Brattle. Never thought I would see this again, and there it was. We have The Letters of E.B. White. Let's see here, what else? This anthology, this octopus edition of Robert Louis Stevenson. Let's see here. A totally unnecessary life of Samuel John Boswell's Life of Johnson. The Art of Hunger, a young Paul Auster, including his nonfiction. We have Thomas Wentworth Higginson, Carlyle's Laugh, but this will be a whole bunch of other personal reminiscences of literary figures. We have, I want to say a standard, but I don't want that as an insult, History of Rome, in one volume with nice maps. And then a couple of first in series, Kennedy for the Fence and Thus Was Adonis Murdered, in mass market paperbacks. I've been lately really in a murder mystery reading mood, so I'm the Thus Was Adonis Murdered might win over all of these things tonight. You never know. But then again, it's up against some stiff competition. And you might look at these things and think, well, the Byron book or a Eichmann Before Jerusalem, that you mentioned that these things have been pulling at you, that you go back to them often. But actually, when it comes to this pile, there is no pull like Robert Louis Stevenson. I know that makes me very old, but nevertheless, we'll see. We'll see. Something from here is going on the pile for tonight. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.